What do you need to work on to get the best and most radical results in your golf game? Well, what do you need to work on, right, to actually move you closer to your goals, to your dreams, right? What do you need to work on to massively accelerate, right? As high performance golfers, right, I'm sure you guys are working on it all, but you know, you guys ever wonder, like, what is the thing that I got to work on? Like, what is the thing that's going to move me the fastest, right? Or are you one of those golfers that, like, go there and you show up to the golf course and you just do it all, where you have, meaning like you have the same routine, like maybe you block it out, and the first, the first portion would be drivers, the next portion would be wedges, and then some putting, maybe go play a little bit, right, cool it down with some wedges again or some short game. But you have it blocked off in sections and you just kind of throw it on autopilot and do it, right? You ever wonder if there's a better way, right? And one of the most, right, common questions that I get from anybody that comes in, and the only thing I work with all my students is, what's the most critical thing that's going to move you forward, right? Because as high performers, like, we want to get better every single day. We want to get better after every single session. We want to get better every single week, every single month. And the truth is, right, you can, right? There are things that you can do to get better every single day, right? There are things you can do to get better every single week, every single month, right? Every single quarter, every single year, year after year after year. Right? You don't have to be stuck with the same game and battle it out, right? And try and grind it and find ways out, right? There are ways that you can, right, get better frequently, right? It might not be huge things all in once, but these small incremental gains, right, compounded, you know, over time, whether it's over a few days, whether it's over a week, over a few months, right? That is how you massively accelerate. It's not the one little thing that makes the biggest jumps, or it's not the one swing that's going to make you break par. It's not the one swing that's going to make you hit it 300 yards, or the one swing that's going to make you win the tournament, right? It's the little things that you're measuring, right? The little wins that you win every single day, right? That move you the fastest, right? So when you start to practice, or when you start to train, right? Again, are you one of those that just go there and you just go on autopilot and you do the thing that you always do, right? And again, it might be different. Like doing the thing that you do doesn't mean like the same drills, but like, do you just show up and do the driver all the time and the approach shots all the time? Or you might change the technique and the drills and the tactics in between, but like, are the things that you're doing the same, right? Are the categories the same week after week, day after day, right? How long have you been doing that, right? If you've been doing that, right, you're on the slowest path to success. I'm sorry, but, right, you are, right? Your game has to be so customized for who you are and what you're facing, that it is constantly changing. Like, the work that needs to be done is the work that needs to be done off of the golf course. It's the prep that you need to do before you get the golf course, right? Or the thoughts, right? It's the strategy, it's the design of what you're gonna do, like, before you even show up, right? Hitting the golf ball, right? Hitting the golf ball, banging the balls, hitting the putts, like, that's the easy stuff. Like, everybody can do that. Everybody can put the time in, right? Everybody can, smash balls, put in hours of putting, put in hours of chipping, right? Go play all the time, right? And if that was the key to success, then you'd see, like, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of golfers around the world playing at the highest level. But the truth is, they're not, right? And that's because the ones that are performing at the highest level is doing the work, right? And the work is before you get there, right? Do you know, like, the thing that you're supposed to do before you get there? Do you know what the objective is? Like, after today's practice, how do I know I succeeded? Right? If your answer is, like, I'm hitting it better, I'm swinging it better, or hitting more solid, is that true? Is that the objective? Right? Do you even know? Or is that the objective every time? I just want to get out there and hit it more solid, hit it more straight, make more putts. Is that the objective all the time? Right? Because if you got the same objectives as, like, that you have today as you had a month ago, right, means you haven't moved, right? If you have the same objectives today that you had a year ago, right, even worse, you haven't moved in a year because you're working on the same stuff, right? Now you might be saying like, I've been, I'm changing what I'm doing, but I'm working on the same stuff, right? And the point is, like, for you to move fast, for you to accelerate massively, like, you have to have super clear objectives, like, before you arrive at the golf course, right? I had a student that came out, right? We were scheduled to have a coaching call, a performance coaching call, but instead she had a tournament this weekend, and she would rather me watch her hit some golf balls instead, and go over some technique stuff. So, we changed some plans up. I met her at the golf course, and was able to watch her hit some. But before we started, right, it was getting super clear on the reason why she would want to switch from what she was doing from our call to wanting to hit balls, right? And right, the most common thing and what she did was like, I just want to hit it better. I got to hit my driver better. I got to keep it in play more. And I was like, amazing, right? You know that you gotta keep your driver better and keep it in play, right? And for most of us, we think that's super specific. I'm gonna go work on my driver, right? But the depth that you go into what you need to do matters the most, because we spent 20, 30 minutes going deep on the importance of the driver and what is the problem that needs to be solved before we even take the first swing, because time is extremely valuable, right? Right. If you ever had problems with your driver, are you the one that just gets to the range and say like, oh, I'm just going to go beat some balls and work it out there? Right. That's the slow way to do it. Right. You might be hitting more balls, but the the progress you make will be so slow. It'll be so frustrating. Right. So we first analyzed like in play versus out of play. Like if you're in position, and for us, how we determine it's not necessarily the fairway, right? Everybody has their own version of it, but for us, like what determines in position is like a direct line to the green, right? You could be in the fairway, you could be in the rough, but you're not in any recovery situation where you got to go sideways, or you gotta, right? You got to take high risk shots, right? Anything that's more high risk in recovery, that would be like recovery. So we analyzed, what is the difference between being in position versus being in recovery? And what does that look like? And we came out, we put a metric on it, right? We talked about what it looks like, and for her, it was the difference between breaking 40 and shooting in the 30s and shooting in the mid 40s, right? That's like a 5 to 6 shot swing in 9 holes, right? Do you guys put a metric on the area of your game so there's a value, or are you guys just hitting balls and working on it to hit it better? Because I'm going to tell you, like, how you start to practice when you know you can save 5 strokes with one thing is far different than how you practice when you're just trying to hit balls and trying to hit drivers, right? But again, we go super deep on that, and why we took it even deeper, like, okay, so what are the trouble, or what's the obstacle standing in your way, right? And so she wasn't hitting it that solid, and so we defined like what's not solid. So she was hitting it a little bit high, getting under it a little bit, and then she was blocking it and fading and small slicing it to the right. So she was either going too far right direction or hitting just under it, and if not, everything was pretty solid. So right, and what she wanted to come in for is like, I want to fix it all for I got a tournament this weekend. But it's starting to, like, again, I can't stress this enough, this is the work. It's defined, like, you can't fix everything, right? When you try and fix everything, nothing gets fixed, right? So you have to prioritize, like, I want to hit my driver good, but the thing that's in front of me, right? And in her example, the 2 things that was in front of her being in position, from breaking 40 versus shooting in the mid 40s, was the ball went right, or she got under it where it didn't go that far, right? So those were the 2 things getting in the way. So, right, is there a way to fix it both in one move? Probably. Could it be overwhelming? Absolutely. Right, so you start to like digest things in bite-sized pieces, and right, you got to start to ask yourself, right, between hitting it right and hitting under it, like which one is right, which one penalizes you more, right? And at first she said, well, they're both pretty bad. I'm like, yeah, of course, I don't want to deny that any shots, I'm not going to lie to you and say both shots are good, but there's one of higher value. And you have to understand what is the highest value target the problem that needs to be solved. Because if you attack the highest value target, you move the most, right? And now you might be thinking like you get under it or you hit it right. Right, not much of a difference, but it's a huge difference, right? And I say it's a huge difference because for one person it would mean differently than another. Because beyond just the surface of getting under it a little bit versus hitting it, or getting under and hitting like 150 yards versus hitting it right 230, right? They don't seem like they don't seem right that close, right? So you can work on any one, but they're extremely far apart because when you hit a certain shot, it makes you feel a certain way. Right? Regardless, you could make the same score. You could still make bogey or double from either position, right? But one of them will make you feel a certain way, right? Right, if you block one right and you hit it right in the trees, and let's say you hit it solid, it goes like 230, 240. If you hate hitting it right, and if it bugs you hitting it right, right, and you do that, it compounds into the rest of your game when you're on the golf course, because now you're thinking about the right shot, you're thinking how to fix it, right? You have this right self-assessment about yourself as you're playing the game, and it affects every other category in your game because of that one shot, even though the score would be the same, right? And if you popped it up or you got under it and it still went like 150, 160 yards, 180 yards, whatever it might be for you, but you were okay with that and you really didn't think anything about it, right? Then it really doesn't affect the other games and you still can recover. On the other hand, like you might be thinking, like if you get under, you're still in the fairway. But if now you're the person that like can't stand it because you got under it, it went high, like, and it just makes you feel awful, or it makes you feel like a beginner, it makes you feel whatever it feels. Now that affects how you think, how you view yourself, and how you view yourself will affect how you do every other category in the game. So you see, you can't work on it all, and you can't just guess. There's a specific value for everything that you do. Right, and unless you start to add that metrics and put that metrics together and see how it affects you and what is the overall damage, like you won't really know, right? So again, I'm going to ask you, are you doing the work? Because if you want to know what it is to work to get the most massive the fastest results possible, the most fulfilling golf, right, this is the work you got to do. You got to sit down, you got to go reflect, you got to think, you got to journal, and you got to know and be so clear on what the plan was, right? Because even when you're practicing and you're hitting balls and you're working on it, right, if you're working on the wrong thing, it's going to frustrate you. And you're not going to commit to doing that thing, and you're going to fall off, and it's just going to be a horrible practice, right? So in my student's case, she couldn't stand, right, getting under it. Right, she was okay hitting it right because it felt pretty good, but getting under it just made her feel weird, right? Made her feel a certain way, made her view herself as a different way. So the number one thing that would move her, right, is to solve the problem of not getting under it, right? To hit more clean and solid shots. Right? And once we were so clear, the instruction, the technique was so precise on fixing that problem, right? Then the next step becomes so much easier, right? And so, coming in, like her first shot was like, oh man, it still went to the right, but like, it's not about, it is about hitting it right. But what's the problem that we need to solve right now? What is the problem at hand? Yeah, getting under it. Let's focus on that, right? And so, even though we spent over half of the time like discussing strategy because she wasn't clear coming in less than half of the time, she solved all of her problems. Right? You don't need massive amounts of time. You need clear strategy, and you need commitment into solving the problem that's in front of you. So you got to take the next step. Right? And if you can take the next step, you move closer to the destination. Right? Once you take that next step, then you take the next step. Right? And so her case was step number one, don't get under it. Right? Hit it more clean. Once you get there, step number two is don't go right. Right? And you solve that problem at hand. Right? Super clear. Instruction changes. Now can you see, like, when you start to practice, there is so many things going on and we just dump it all in. But are you that clear when you start to practice? Are you that precise that the objective of my session today is to eliminate getting under it? Right? My objective for my session today is to eliminate hitting it right. Right? My objective for my session today, right, is to not three putt from inside 30 feet, whatever that is. Right? That way, when you leave the course, when you leave your session, when you leave the golf course, when you leave your round, it's super clear. Did I accomplish that objective or not? And if you did, right, you got closer. If you didn't, then you didn't move, right? And then your question, if you didn't move, like, did I move a little closer? How much better did I get, or did I get worse? Where you're always measuring where you are in relation to where you want to be, right? This is the real work that you have to do. And if you're not doing this, then you're going to waste tons of time working on the stuff that don't matter. They're important, but they don't matter, right? And you're going to be spending lots of time, and you'll look back 30 days, 6 months, 1 year, doing the exact same thing, exact same practice routine, right? And again, practice routine could be reaction, like, oh, I'm hitting it bad this week, let me work on this. Like, that's a routine, right? And that means you haven't moved, right? So go ahead and do the real work, everybody. High performance, if you want to get there, if you want to move fast, right, take the time to really reflect and see what is the thing that's going to move me the furthest. Create the objective. And if you complete that objective, you got closer. And if you didn't, right, then you didn't. Right? It's not about putting in the time and making the swings. It's about overcoming challenges. It's about overcoming obstacles. And the more obstacles and challenges you can get through, the further and faster you go. Right? Don't get fooled by time. Don't get fooled by like trying to grind it out. Does that work? Of course it works. But what really matters is not the time. What really matters is you overcoming the challenges in front of you, getting to that next step. Go ahead and do that, and you will find yourself massively accelerating faster than you ever thought. And you'll be happier doing it.